I had 45 minutes to catch my flight. 45 minutes between me and the first real sleep I'd had in nearly 2 days. 36 hours on shift in the emergency room at Mount Sinai, back-to-back traumas, a cardiac arrest, a child with a broken arm who would not stop screaming, and a middle-aged man who kept trying to pull out his IV while telling me I was the most beautiful angel he'd ever seen. Flattering, but exhausting. My scrubs were wrinkled, my hair was escaping from its ponytail in 17 different directions, and my eyes felt like someone had poured sand directly into them. All I wanted was my tiny apartment in Boston, my lumpy mattress, and the sweet silence of unconsciousness. I looked at the boarding pass clutched in my hand. Flight 1123, gate 14C, seat 22B. Easy enough, even for a brain running on fumes and bad vending machine coffee. I'd done this route 100 times before. Boston to New York to Boston, but never with my body screaming for rest like this. My suitcase felt like it was filled with bricks, and every step through JFK was a small act of war against gravity. When I got to gate 14C, I noticed the plane looked different from the usual commercial jets. Smaller, sleeker, fewer windows, and a kind of hush around it, like the air itself was holding its breath. My exhausted brain processed this as some kind of upgrade. Maybe the airline had overbooked and put me in first class on a nicer plane. Lucky me, I thought. Finally, something good. The interior was stunning. 12 seats total, each one a massive leather throne with more legroom than my entire studio apartment. The cabin smelled like polished wood and expensive cologne, and there wasn't a single flight attendant in sight. I threw my bag into an overhead bin that closed with a soft, satisfied click and practically collapsed into seat 3A. Window seat, because why not? If I was getting a mystery upgrade, I was going all the way. I didn't even buckle my seatbelt. I told myself I would just close my eyes for a second, until takeoff. Just a few minutes to rest my burning eyelids. That was the last thing I remembered. The next thing I knew, a voice was pulling me out of a darkness so deep I didn't even remember falling asleep. The voice was male, low, and carried a note of something between annoyance and genuine surprise. "You're in my seat." I opened my eyes slowly. The world came back in fragments. Soft leather, the hum of engines, the blue of the sky through the windows. Sky? We were in the sky. I looked at the man standing over me, and my breath caught somewhere in my throat. He was tall, with dark hair that fell just slightly over his forehead and eyes the color of storm clouds. Not blue exactly, more like steel with something warm hiding underneath. His suit was charcoal gray and fit him like it had been stitched onto his body by angels. He looked like the kind of man who had never been told no in his entire life. "I'm sorry," I started, my voice still thick with sleep. I'm sorry, Where am I?" I finally managed. His lips twitched. Almost a smile, but not quite.
"You're on my plane? We're going to Rome."
Rome? The word hit me like a bucket of cold water. Rome? Italy? Rome? I looked out the window again as if the clouds might rearrange themselves into Boston. No such luck. I stood up so fast my head nearly hit the overhead compartment. My hands were shaking. Oh my God, I got on the wrong plane. I was supposed to be on flight 1123 to Boston. I need to get off. Can you turn around? He blinked at me. And if I hadn't been in full panic mode, I would have noticed the way his eyes crinkled slightly, like he was genuinely amused. We're at 38,000 feet. Turning around isn't really an option. I ran to the window, pressing my face against the glass. Clouds. Endless clouds. No ground, no airport, no way out! "I'm screwed," I whispered. "Sorry for the language, but I'm completely screwed." He didn't answer right away. Instead, he did something I didn't expect. He sat down in the seat next to me, the one I had apparently stolen from him, and crossed his legs with the casual confidence of a man who owned everything in sight, including probably the clouds outside. "You're not screwed," he said. "You're just taking an unexpected vacation." I stared at him. "I can't go to Rome. I have work in 2 days. I don't have a passport with me. I don't have anything." He reached over and picked up my purse from where it had fallen on the floor. With an ease that should have annoyed me, he opened it and pulled out a small blue booklet. My passport. I looked at it like it was a magic trick. I'd gotten it 3 years ago when a friend invited me to a weekend in Montreal, but I never actually used it. It had been sitting in my bag since then because I was too lazy to take it out. "You do," he said, holding it up. "Okay, fine, I have a passport. But that doesn't mean I can just go to Rome. I don't have clothes, I don't have money, I don't have a plan." He studied me for a long moment.
those storm-colored eyes moving over my face like he was reading something written there. Then he said something that stopped me cold. I could have woken you up and called security the second I saw you.
But I didn't. Do you want to know why? I shook my head, not trusting my voice. Because you looked peaceful. He said the words slowly, like he was tasting them for the first time. People don't usually look peaceful around me. They're nervous, or afraid, or trying too hard to impress me. But you were just asleep. Drooling a little, actually. I felt my face heat up. And you looked like you needed it, so I let you stay. The air between us changed. It became heavier, charged with something I couldn't name. I sat back down slowly, my panic giving way to something else. Curiosity, maybe? Or the strange realization that this man wasn't what I expected. You're not throwing me out? I said. No. Why not? He was quiet for a moment. Then he smiled, and it transformed his entire face. The storm clouds cleared, and there was something almost boyish underneath. Because it's been a long time since anyone surprised me. And you're definitely a surprise. My name is Julian Cross, by the way. The name hit me like a truck. Julian Cross? The Julian Cross? Founder of Cross Technologies? The man who had built a billion-dollar empire before he turned 35? The one who never gave interviews and whose face appeared on magazine covers with headlines like The Phantom Billionaire? I blinked 3 times in rapid succession. The Julian Cross? He tilted his head. Is there another one? I'm Maya Rodriguez. I'm a nurse. Well, a tired nurse who apparently boards the wrong private jets. His smile grew. A nurse who speaks Italian, by any chance? I frowned. How did you know? Your reaction when I said Rome. Most people would have panicked about the language barrier. You didn't. Plus, you have a slight accent when you speak English. Something Mediterranean. I was impressed, despite myself. I speak Italian, Spanish, and basic French. My parents are from Puerto Rico, so Spanish came first. Italian I learned because my grandmother was from Naples, and she refused to speak English when she was angry, which was often. Julian laughed. It was a deep sound that did something strange to my chest. Then you might be exactly what I need. I raised an eyebrow. Excuse me? He leaned back in his seat, his eyes never leaving mine. I have a meeting tomorrow with Enzo Ferrari. No relation to the car, but just as intimidating. He's an Italian industrialist, and he's bringing his 7-year-old twins because his wife is in the hospital. Nothing serious, just a minor surgery, but he didn't want to cancel. The problem is, my Italian is terrible, and the twins don't speak English. I was going to hire a translator, but you have me, I finished. A random nurse who accidentally invaded your jet. A random nurse who speaks fluent Italian and has the kind of calm demeanor that suggests you deal with chaos every day. He paused. I saw the way you handled waking up on a plane heading to a different continent. You panicked for exactly 30 seconds, then started asking practical questions. That's rare. I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to demand that he find a way to send me back. But another part, a much louder part, was whispering that this was the most interesting thing that had happened to me in years. Maybe ever. What's in it for me? I asked. He looked surprised. Name it. A real tour of Rome. Not the tourist traps. The places you only know if you live there, or you're the kind of person who can get into places normal people can't. Julian studied me for a long moment. Then he extended his hand. Deal. When our fingers touched, it was like static electricity, small but impossible to ignore. His hand was warm and his grip was firm, and he held on a second longer than necessary. I pulled my hand back and tried to ignore the way my heart was racing. So, Rome. I'm really going to Rome. You're really going to Rome. He turned in his seat to face me fully, and for a moment, I saw something vulnerable in his expression. Have you ever been? Never left the East Coast, I admitted. Nosing doesn't exactly pay for European vacations. And now, you're going to Rome on a private jet. He said the words like he was trying them on. With a stranger. A very well-dressed stranger, I corrected. He laughed again. And technically, you're not a stranger anymore. I know your name, your profession, and that you snore. I do not snore! You definitely snore. But it's a soft snore, almost endearing. I threw a small pillow at him. He caught it without even looking. The rest of the flight passed in a blur of conversation and laughter. He told me about Cross Technologies, about how he'd started the company in his dorm room with a prototype that nearly electrocuted his roommate. I told him about the ER, about the patient who tried to fight me because I wouldn't give him extra pudding, about the time a 4-year-old told me I had a face like a potato and then asked for a hug. Kids are brutally honest, I said. That's why I love working with them. No games, no hidden agendas, just pure, unfiltered truth. Julian was quiet for a moment. Then softly, "That sounds nice. Everyone in my world wants something. Money, connections, favors. I can't remember the last time someone looked at me and didn't see a bank account." I looked at him then. Really looked. I saw the exhaustion behind his eyes, the tension in his shoulders that had nothing to do with the flight and everything to do with carrying the weight of an empire. And I saw something else too. Loneliness. The kind that all the money in the world couldn't fix. "When was the last time you took a real vacation?" I asked. He blinked. "I don't remember." "Then maybe we both need this." His eyes met mine, and what I saw there made my breath catch. It was hope, fragile and unexpected. The same hope I was feeling growing in my own chest. "Maybe," he said, his voice rough. The pilot announced our descent into Rome, and I watched out the window as the city appeared below us. The dome of St. Peter's, the winding Tiber River, the ancient buildings glowing gold in the afternoon light. It was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. "First time in Rome?" Julian said quietly. I nodded, not trusting my voice. He took my hand again. This time, he didn't let go. We landed at a private terminal and a car was waiting for us. Black, sleek, and so clean I was afraid to touch anything with my tired scrubs. Julian didn't seem to notice or care. The hotel was called the Portrait Roma, and our rooms overlooked the Spanish Steps. When the receptionist handed us 2 keys and said something about connecting suites, I raised an eyebrow at Julian. "Connecting suites," he said with a perfectly straight face. The hotel was fully booked. Pure coincidence. I laughed. "You're a terrible liar." He smiled. "But you're smiling, so I'll take it." My room was obscene. A massive bed with sheets that felt like liquid silk, a marble bathroom bigger than my entire apartment, and windows that opened onto the most beautiful view I'd ever seen. I took a shower that lasted 45 minutes, and when I came out wrapped in a robe softer than anything I owned, I looked at my suitcase and sighed. Wrinkled scrubs and worn jeans were not exactly Rome appropriate. I did my best. Jeans, a clean black top, and the only pair of shoes that didn't make me want to cry. I dried my hair, put on some mascara, and decided it would have to be enough. An hour later, Julian knocked on my door. He had changed into dark pants and a white shirt with the sleeves rolled up, revealing forearms that looked like they belonged in a Greek statue. Completely unfair. "Ready?" he asked. "Ready as I'll ever be." We walked through Rome like I was dreaming. First, the Trevi fountain, where he handed me a coin and said, "Make a wish," without telling me what it is. I closed my eyes and wished for something I was too afraid to name. Then the Pantheon, where he explained the history of the Oculus with such passion, I forgot he was supposed to be a cold billionaire. He knew things about architecture, about art, about the way light moved through ancient spaces. He was different here. Softer. We stopped at a small restaurant near the Piazza Navona, the kind of place with checkered tablecloths and a man singing opera between tables. Julian ordered for us in broken Italian, and the waiter looked at him with such pity that I stepped in. "Scusa," I said in my grandmother's Neapolitan accent. "Lui vuole il pesce, ma senza aglio. Grazie." The waiter's face lit up. He started asking me questions in rapid Italian about where I learned the language, and before I knew it, we were deep in conversation about Naples and my grandmother and the best way to make ragu. When the waiter finally left, Julian was staring at me like I'd grown a second head. "You just negotiated a meal modification and made a friend in under 2 minutes." I shrugged. "That's what happens when you're not terrifying." "I'm not terrifying." "You're Julian Cross. You own half the internet. Everyone is terrified of you." He leaned closer. "Are you terrified of me?" I looked into his storm-colored eyes and felt my heart do something complicated. "No," I said. "I
think I'm too tired to be terrified. He smiled.
Good! We ate and talked and laughed. He told me about his father who had died when Julian was 22 and left him a company that was barely surviving. How he'd built it into something enormous, not because he wanted to, but because he was afraid of failing. How his mother lived in Connecticut and they barely spoke because she thought he'd become exactly like his father, cold and distant and married to work. Do you want to be like him? I asked. Julian was quiet for a long time. I want to be successful. I want to honor what he built. He paused. I don't know if there's a difference. There is, I said gently. You can respect his memory without losing yourself. You can be successful and still be human. He looked at me like I just told him the sky was green. No one has ever said that to me. Then the people around you are idiots. He laughed so loud that the opera singer looked over and smiled. After dinner, we walked to the Colosseum. It was lit up against the night sky, massive and ancient and completely breathtaking. Julian stood next to me, our shoulders almost touching. Thank you, he said. For what? For reminding me what it feels like to just be. Not Julian Cross, the CEO. Just a guy walking through Rome with someone who doesn't want anything from me. I turned to look at him, and found him already looking at me. His eyes were soft in the moonlight, and he was standing close enough that I could feel the warmth coming off his body. Maya, he started. His hand came up to touch my face. His fingers traced my cheekbone like I was something precious. I stopped breathing. Can I? He asked. His voice was rough. Please, I whispered. He kissed me, and the whole world disappeared. His lips were soft but sure, moving against mine like he'd been thinking about this for as long as I had. His hands cupped my face, and my hands found his chest, and I could feel his heartbeat racing as fast as mine. It was the kind of kiss that rewires your brain. The kind that makes you believe in fate and wrong turns and ridiculous coincidences. When we finally pulled apart, we were both breathing hard. His forehead rested against mine. Finally, he murmured. Was it worth the wait? Worth every second. He kissed me again, softer this time, then against my lips. I know this is crazy. We've known each other for 1 day, but I don't care. I laughed. It was a shaky sound. Crazy is my middle name. Then let's be crazy together. The next morning, I woke up to sunlight streaming through my windows and a text message from Julian. Meeting at 10, breakfast first, come hungry. I met him in the hotel restaurant where he was drinking espresso and looking at his phone with a furrowed brow. Everything okay? I asked. Enzo is nervous. He's worried the twins will disrupt the meeting. His wife is still in the hospital and he hasn't slept. I can help. Julian looked up. How? I'm a pediatric nurse. I've spent years calming down scared children and anxious parents. Let me take care of the twins while you talk. They won't even notice I'm there. He hesitated. Maya, you don't have to. I know I don't have to. I want to. Let me do what I do best. He was quiet for a moment. Then he nodded. Okay, but you stay in the background. This deal is important. I promise to be the quietest, most invisible nurse in the history of Rome. The meeting was at Enzo's office, near the Spanish Steps. The building was old and elegant, with high ceilings and marble floors. Enzo himself was a barrel-chested man with kind eyes and a mustache that belonged in a different century. And attached to his legs like barnacles were 2 7-year-olds. A boy and a girl with dark curly hair and matching expressions of pure mischief. Matteo and Sofia. Enzo introduced them with the exhausted voice of a parent who had not slept in days. I'm so sorry. My wife usually handles the chaos. Julian and Enzo sat down at a conference table and started discussing numbers and logistics and distribution rights. Within 5 minutes, Matteo was climbing the curtains, and Sofia had found a marker and was drawing on the wall. I caught Sofia's eye and smiled. In Italian, I said softly, I know a better game.
Do you want to play? She stopped mid-drawing.
What kind of game? A secret mission. You and your brother have to be my helpers. We need to find all the hidden treasures in this room without making any noise. Ready? Matteo dropped the curtain and ran over. What treasure? I pulled 2 empty notebooks and pens from my bag. I always carried them for charting notes, and somehow they'd ended up in my purse. Your mission is to draw everything you see, every detail, and at the end, we'll compare drawings. Whoever finds the most hidden details wins. The twins grabbed the notebooks and sat down on the floor with the kind of intense concentration only children can achieve. For the next 2 hours, they drew pictures of the conference table, the paintings on the wall, the fancy light fixtures. Every few minutes, one of them would tap my arm and whisper something like, "I saw a tiny statue on the shelf," or "There's a crack in the ceiling that looks like a bunny." I nodded and whispered back encouragements, and the meeting continued uninterrupted. When Enzo and Julian finally stood up and shook hands, both of them were smiling. "Deal," Enzo said. 50 million over 3 years. Julian looked at me. His expression was unreadable, but something warm flickered behind his eyes. Enzo came over and looked at the twins' drawings. Then he looked at me. "Where did Julian find you?" "Long story," I said, "but I'm glad I could help." Enzo shook my hand with both of his. "You didn't just help, you saved the meeting. I was ready to cancel, but you gave me peace of mind." After Enzo and the twins left, Julian stood in the middle of the office, looking at me like I was a puzzle he was trying to solve. "Maya?" "Yes?" He crossed the room in 3 steps and kissed me, right there in the middle of Enzo Ferrari's office, with Roman sunlight pouring through the windows. It was desperate and grateful and full of promise. When he pulled back, he said, "You're extraordinary. I'm just a nurse who got on the wrong plane. You're the best thing that ever happened to me. And I know that sounds insane because we've known each other for 2 days, but I don't care." I kissed him again. "I don't care either." The rest of the week was a dream. Julian canceled his other meetings and we spent every moment together. We ate gelato on the Spanish Steps and got lost in the Borghese gardens. We took a train to Naples and I showed him the street where my grandmother grew up. We argued about whether pineapple belongs on pizza. I said no, he said absolutely, and we agreed to disagree. On our last night in Rome, Julian took me back to the Colosseum. The moon was full and the ancient stones glowed silver. He held my hands and looked at me with those storm-colored eyes and said, "I don't want this to end. When we go back to New York, I don't want to go back to being strangers." "Then don't," I said. He smiled. "Be my girlfriend. Be my everything. I know it's fast, but I've never been more sure of anything." "Yes," I said. "Yes, yes, yes." He kissed me under the Roman moon, and I felt like the luckiest woman alive. Going back to real life was harder than I expected. Julian was busy all the time. Meetings, calls, deals, crises that felt like emergencies, but were really just corporate drama. I was working 12-hour shifts in the ER, coming home exhausted and falling asleep before I could even text him back. We made it work, but it wasn't easy. He flew me to Boston on his private jet when I had days off. I surprised him in his office with coffee and stayed up late to video call him when he was traveling. We fought about stupid things and made up in spectacular ways. 6 months later, he proposed. We were back in Rome at the Colosseum where we'd had our first real kiss. He got down on one knee and pulled out a ring that sparkled like it had swallowed a star. "Maya Rodriguez," he said, "you got on the wrong plane and found me. I spent my whole life building an empire, and I thought that was success. But I was wrong. Success is you. Success is this. Will you marry me?" I was crying so hard I couldn't speak. I nodded and he slid the ring onto my finger and then he kissed me and everyone around us started clapping. We got married 1 year later at the Villa Borghese in Rome. It was small, just our closest friends and family. My aunts from Puerto Rico flew in and cried through the whole ceremony. Julian's mother came and she hugged me afterward and whispered, "Thank you for bringing my son back to life." The ceremony was in Italian and English. When the officiant said, "You may kiss the bride," Julian dipped me so low I thought I was going to fall. And then he kissed me like we were the only 2 people in the world.
Our daughter Lucia was born 2 years later. She has her father's storm-colored eyes and my stubbornness, and she refuses to sleep through the night no matter what we try. She's perfect. Tonight, we're back in Rome. Julian is on the floor of our hotel room playing with Lucia, who is laughing so hard she has hiccups. I'm sitting on the bed watching them, and my heart is so full it hurts. "Tell me the story, Papa," Lucia says in her tiny voice. "What story, baby?"
"The one about the plane. How Mama got on the wrong one." Julian looks at me and smiles. That slow smile that still makes my stomach flip. "Your Mama," he says, "was so tired she couldn't see straight. She got on a plane that wasn't hers and woke up in Rome with a stranger." Lucia giggles. "A scary stranger?" "Very scary," Julian says. "But your Mama wasn't afraid. She just looked at me and said, 'I'm too tired to be scared.' And that was it. I was done for." I throw a pillow at him. "You were not done for." "I was completely done for." He catches the pillow and pulls me down onto the floor next to him. And I've been done for ever since. Lucia crawls into my lap. "I want to get on the wrong plane someday." "No, you don't," I say. "But maybe. Maybe you will. And maybe it will bring you exactly where you need to be." Outside the window, the lights of Rome are sparkling. The Colosseum glows in the distance. And I think about that tired nurse in the airport who couldn't keep her eyes open. She got on the wrong plane. She invaded a billionaire's private jet. She fell in love with a stranger. And it was the best mistake she ever made. Sometimes the wrong turn takes you to the right place. Sometimes the worst day becomes the beginning of everything. Sometimes you just have to be too tired to be afraid and brave enough to stay on the plane.